Imagine coming home to find your mother-in-law throwing your clothes onto the wet pavement. She is screaming that you are a gold digger. She says you are a tenant who doesn't belong. She tells you that the landlord wants you gone by morning. But there is one thing she doesn't know. She is standing in the lobby of a building her own son owns. And the man she thinks is a poor loser is actually the man who signs her monthly allowance checks. Today, a mother is about to learn a very expensive lesson about respect. Stick around until the end, because the look on her face when the truth comes out is something you do not want to miss. Before we get into this incredible story, please take a moment to subscribe to our channel. It helps us bring you more stories like this every single day. Also, leave a comment below telling us where you are watching this video from. We love hearing from our community all around the world. Sarah was a woman who believed in hard work. She grew up in a small town where everyone knew everyone. Her parents didn't have much money, but they gave her a lot of love. They taught her that a person's worth isn't found in their bank account. It is found in their character. Sarah took those words to heart. She worked 2 jobs to get through nursing school. She lived in a tiny apartment. She ate simple meals. She never complained. Eventually, Sarah moved to the big city for a better job at a hospital. She found a modest apartment in an older building. The paint was peeling in the hallways. The elevator was slow, but it was home. It was clean, and the rent was something she could afford. One rainy Tuesday, the elevator finally gave up. Sarah was carrying 3 bags of groceries. She sighed and started climbing the stairs. On the 3rd floor, she saw a man struggling with a heavy wooden crate. He looked about her age. He wore a faded gray hoodie and worn-out jeans. His hands were covered in dust. "Do you need a hand with that?" Sarah asked. She set her groceries down. The man looked up. He had kind eyes and a warm smile. "I think I've got it, but this crate is heavier than it looks. I'm David, by the way. I just moved into 4B. Sarah smiled back. "I'm Sarah. I'm in 3C. Welcome to the building. The elevator is a bit temperamental." David laughed. Temperamental is a nice way to put it. It's a complete disaster. Sarah helped him steady the crate. They talked for a few minutes. David told her he did consulting work from home. He seemed quiet and humble. Over the next few weeks, they kept bumping into each other. They met at the mailboxes. They met at the local coffee shop. Sarah found herself looking forward to these little moments. David was different from the men Sarah usually met in the city. He wasn't flashy. He didn't brag about his job. He listened when she talked about her long shifts at the hospital. He brought her soup when he heard her coughing through the thin walls. He was a good man. 6 months later, they were inseparable. A year later, David asked Sarah to marry him. He didn't give her a giant diamond. He gave her a simple, elegant band that belonged to his grandmother. Sarah didn't care about the price. She loved him. "There's one thing, Sarah," David said the night before they went to the courthouse. "My mother. She's a bit difficult. She has high expectations. She doesn't really know about us yet." Sarah hugged him. "Don't worry, David. Families can be tough. We will win her over with kindness." They had a small ceremony, just 2 friends as witnesses. They decided to keep living in Sarah's apartment for a while. David said he liked the neighborhood. He said he didn't need anything fancy. Sarah agreed. They were saving money for a house one day, or so she thought. What Sarah didn't know was that David was not a struggling consultant. David was the CEO of a major real estate firm. He owned dozens of buildings across the city, including the one they lived in. He had grown up in extreme wealth, but he hated the phoniness of it. He hated how people treated him differently when they saw his car or his watch. He wanted to find a woman who loved him for David, not for his money. And he had found her in Sarah. However, there was one person who lived for money and status. That was David's mother, Eleanor. Eleanor lived in a penthouse on the other side of the city. She spent her days at high-end spas and her evenings at charity galas. She viewed the world as a ladder. She was at the top. Everyone else was beneath her. David had kept his marriage a secret from Eleanor for 3 months. He knew she would react poorly. He He wanted to enjoy his honeymoon phase in peace. But secrets in high society don't stay secret for long. A friend of Eleanor's had seen David and Sarah walking hand in hand in a shabby neighborhood. Eleanor was furious. She didn't call David. She decided to investigate herself. She hired a private investigator. Within 2 days, she had the address. She had Sarah's name. She had Sarah's work history. A nurse. Eleanor spat the word out like it was poison. My son married a common nurse? And he is living in a slum. Eleanor didn't see the building as David's property. She didn't even know he had bought it. To her, it was just a dirty brick box filled with nobodies. She decided she was going to fix this. She was going to save her son from this terrible mistake. One Monday morning, Sarah was home alone. David had gone to the office, which Sarah thought was a small co-working space downtown. There was a sharp, loud knock on the door. It wasn't the friendly knock of a neighbor. It was aggressive. Sarah opened the door. Standing there was a woman who looked like she stepped out of a fashion magazine. She wore a fur coat and pearls. Her face was pulled tight in a permanent scowl. "Can I help you?" Sarah asked politely. The woman pushed past her into the small living room. She looked around with pure disgust. She pulled a white handkerchief from her purse and held it to her nose. "So, this is where you've trapped him," the woman said. Sarah was confused. "Excuse me? Who are you?" "I am Eleanor," the woman said. "David's mother. And you must be the girl who thinks she's hit the jackpot." Sarah's heart sank. She had heard David say his mother was difficult. But this was much worse. "It's nice to meet you, Eleanor. David has told me about you. Please sit down. I can make some tea." "I wouldn't drink anything from this kitchen," Eleanor said. She walked over to a photo of Sarah and David on the bookshelf. She picked it up and put it back face down. "Let's get to the point. You are a distraction. David is a man of status. He belongs in a different world. A world you can't even imagine." Sarah stood her ground. "I love David, and he loves me. That's all that matters to us." Eleanor laughed. It was a cold, dry sound. "Love? Love is for books, dear. In the real world, there is business. And you are a bad investment. I want you out. I want you out of this apartment. And I want you out of my son's life." "I'm not going anywhere," Sarah said firmly. "This is our home." Eleanor stepped closer. Her eyes narrowed. "Home? You think this pile of bricks is a home? I have connections, girl. I know people. I've already spoken to the management company that handles this district. This building is slated for redevelopment. That means everyone here is getting an eviction notice. Starting with you." Sarah felt a chill. "You can't do that. There are families here. Elderly people who have lived here for 20 years. "Watch me," Eleanor said. She turned and marched out of the apartment, slamming the door behind her. Sarah was shaken. She waited for David to come home. When he walked through the door, she told him everything. She was crying. She was worried about their neighbors. She was worried about their future. David listened quietly. His jaw was tight. He looked angrier than Sarah had ever seen him. But he didn't raise his voice. He just hugged her. "Don't worry about her, Sarah," David whispered. "She has no power here. I promise you, everything will be fine." "But she said she's getting everyone evicted," Sarah sobbed. "She said she has connections." David kissed her forehead. "I have connections too. Trust me." The next week was a nightmare. Eleanor didn't stop. She started showing up at the building every day. She brought men in expensive suits. They carried clipboards. They walked through the halls making loud comments about gutting the place and clearing out the trash. The neighbors were terrified. Mrs. Gable, the 80-year-old woman in 2A, came to Sarah in tears. "They said I have 30 days, Sarah. Where will I go? I've lived here since my husband passed away." Sarah felt sick. She tried to call David, but he was in meetings. He told her to stay calm. He told her he was working on it. On Friday morning, the situation peaked. Sarah was coming back from a night shift at the hospital. As she walked toward the building, she saw a moving truck. She saw boxes on the sidewalk. and she saw Eleanor. Eleanor was standing by the front door. She was pointing at things and barking orders. Two men were carrying a sofa out of the lobby. It was the sofa from the common area where the residents used to sit and chat. "Stop!" Sarah shouted. She ran up to Eleanor. "What are you doing? You have no right." Eleanor looked at Sarah with a smug grin. She held up a legal-looking document. "Actually, I do. The management firm has authorized an immediate safety clearance. This building is officially condemned for emergency repairs. Everyone must vacate by sunset." "That's a lie," Sarah cried. "There's nothing wrong with this building." "It doesn't matter what you think," Eleanor said. She looked at the men. "Keep moving. Take everything to the dump. And if this woman gets in your way, call the police for trespassing." Sarah was desperate. She tried to push past Eleanor to get into the building. Eleanor grabbed her arm. "Get your hands off her." The voice boomed across the street. Everyone stopped. David was walking toward them. He wasn't wearing his faded hoodie today. He was wearing a navy blue suit that cost more than Sarah's annual salary. He looked powerful. He looked like a king. Eleanor smiled. "David, thank goodness you're here. I'm taking care of everything. I've cleared out this dump. We can get you back to the penthouse today. I've already hired a lawyer to handle the divorce from this person." David walked right up to his mother. He didn't look at the moving truck. He didn't look at the suits with clipboards. He looked directly into his mother's eyes. "Mother," David said. His voice was like ice. "What do you think you are doing?" "I'm saving you, David. This building is a ruin. I've arranged for the eviction of these people so it can be torn down. It's for your own good." David took the legal document from Eleanor's hand. He ripped it in half. Then he ripped it again. He tossed the pieces onto the wet sidewalk. "You didn't talk to the management company, Mother," David said. "Because I am the management company. I own this building. I own the firm that manages it. And I own the land it stands on." The silence that followed was deafening. Eleanor's mouth dropped open. She looked at the building, then back at her son. You own this?" she whispered. "But why would you live here? Why would you live like a pauper?" "Because I wanted to find someone who loved me for who I am," David said. He reached out and took Sarah's hand. He pulled her close to his side. "And I found her. Sarah didn't know I had a penny. She loved me when she thought I was a struggling consultant. She helped me carry boxes. She shared her meals with me. She protected her neighbors from you." Eleanor tried to recover her dignity. She straightened her fur coat. "Well, if you own it, then you know it's a bad investment. You should still tear it down. We can build luxury condos. We can make millions." David shook his head. "No, Mother. We aren't building condos. We are renovating. We are fixing the elevator. We are painting the walls. And we are lowering the rent for everyone who lives here." He turned to the men with the clipboards. "You work for me. Put that sofa back. Right now. If I see one more box on the sidewalk, you are all fired. And tell the moving company to leave. They will be paid for their time, but their services are no longer required." The men scrambled to obey. They looked terrified. Eleanor was shaking with rage. "You are choosing these people over your own family? Over your own mother? I raised you for greatness, David. Not for this. You raised me to value money over people," David said. "And that was your biggest mistake. You came here today to bully my wife. You came here to put an 80-year-old woman on the street just to satisfy your ego. You aren't family right now, Eleanor. You're a landlord's nightmare." "How dare you?" Eleanor screamed. "I am your mother. I will not be spoken to this way." "Then leave," David said quietly. "Go back to your penthouse. And don't bother checking your mail. I'm suspending your access to the family trust for 6 months. Since you think it's so easy to clear out people who have nothing, I think you should try living on a budget for a while." Eleanor's face went pale. The trust fund was her entire life. Without it, she couldn't pay her staff. She couldn't pay her club fees. She couldn't even pay her gardener. "You wouldn't," she gasped. "I already did," David said. He checked his watch. The bank was notified 10 minutes ago. Now please get off my property. You are trespassing. Eleanor looked around. The neighbors had come out onto their balconies. They were watching. They were whispering. Some of them were even cheering. The queen had been dethroned. She had been defeated by the very son she tried to control. Without another word, Eleanor turned and stumbled toward her waiting town car. She looked small. She looked old. The car sped away, splashing mud onto her expensive coat as it went. Sarah stood there, stunned. She looked at David. She looked at his expensive suit. She looked at the way the workmen were bowing to him. "David?" she whispered. You own all of this?" David turned to her. The ice in his eyes melted instantly. He looked like the man she had met on the stairs again. He looked nervous. "I'm so sorry, Sarah," he said. "I should have told you sooner. I wanted to tell you, but I was so happy just being David the neighbor. I didn't want the money to change us." Sarah looked at the building. She thought about the last year. She thought about the soup he brought her. She thought about the way he listened to her stories. "It didn't change you," she said. "You're still the man who helped me with my groceries. You're just a man who can actually fix the elevator now." David laughed and hugged her tight. "The elevator will be fixed by Monday. I promise." Over the next few months, the building underwent a transformation. But it wasn't the kind of transformation Eleanor wanted. There were no luxury condos. There were no marble lobbies. Instead, the roof was fixed. The heating system was replaced. The hallways were painted a warm, inviting yellow. Mrs. Gable got a brand new kitchen. The common area was filled with comfortable chairs and a small library. David and Sarah stayed in their apartment. They liked the view. They liked their neighbors. David still worked as a consultant, but now Sarah knew he was consulting on how to make the city a better place for everyone, not just the rich. As for Eleanor, the 6 months without her trust fund were the hardest of her life. She had to sell her furs. She had to fire her cook. She had to learn how to drive herself to the grocery store. For the first time in her life, she saw what it was like to be one of those people. She eventually apologized. It wasn't a perfect apology. She was still a bit snobbish. But she never tried to evict anyone again. And she never, ever spoke down to Sarah. Because she knew that Sarah wasn't just a nurse. Sarah was the woman who held the keys to David's heart. And in David's world, that was the highest status of all. Sarah learned that sometimes the person you think is just a regular neighbor is actually someone extraordinary. And David learned that the best way to use power is to protect those who have none. They lived happily in their shabby building. It wasn't a palace, but it was full of love. And to them, that was worth more than all the real estate in the world. The neighbors always smiled when they saw David and Sarah walking down the street. They didn't see a billionaire and his wife. They saw two friends. They saw a couple who had saved their home. And they knew that as long as David was the landlord, they were safe. The building stood tall for many years. It became a symbol in the neighborhood. A symbol that wealth doesn't have to mean greed. Can mean community. Can mean kindness. And every time the elevator went up and down without a single creak, Sarah would catch David's eye and wink. He would just smile and hold her hand. They had built a life on a foundation of truth. And that is a building that can never be torn down. Thank you for watching this story today. It reminds us all that you should never judge a book by its cover. You never know who someone truly is or what they are capable of. If you enjoyed this video, please give it a thumbs up. Don't forget to subscribe and hit the notification bell so you never miss another story. And tell us in the comments, have you ever stood up to someone who was being a bully? We'd love to hear your experiences. See you in the next video.